Hey guys, it's Matt in the middle of the nor'easter. Philadelphia area is getting off pretty easy. I think I'm going to end up with like 6 inches socked in here for another 3 or 4 hours before I get out and clear the gutters, shovel the snow, and all that. Rob is getting slammed up in New England. He's in Connecticut. I think they're not. It's not as bad as Boston, but perhaps up to 15 inches. He says he's going to try to be able to load my free voice video for tomorrow, but in that situation, could even be Monday. So for a lot of us socked in, it's good to do a long subscriber email session. Somebody's probably sitting on a beach somewhere in Australia like, Matt, the whole world doesn't revolve around the Northeast blue states, United States. I hear you. I hear you. This first one we'll do quick. Just came in. Good way to start. Carl sent me this. Basically, we live in some sort of a script. We live in a fractal reality. Uncanny Deduction is still delivering clowns out into the reality. It's just the same scripts kind of over and over again. It has a limited choice, but people don't notice. We notice, but people like me, people like you notice, but your friends and family don't notice. So, diseased Kenyan monkey in the movie Outbreak. I think that's the one with Dustin Hoffman, but not as Rain Man. Diseased monkey transported to America by Kenyan Airlines stage brazen escape in rural Pennsylvania. I haven't followed this news story. I know a bunch of monkeys got turned over in a truck or something, and one or two went missing. I just don't watch the news. I've heard this. So, of course, I'm assuming Carl's right with the Kenyan connection, Kenyan Airways. The next one says, I did come across this story yesterday because I was trying to get an update on the storm. There was a major bridge collapse in the Pittsburgh area where people had to be saved. It was like a movie. They had to be, I don't know, brought up with a rope or something, but very few injuries, but it could have been much worse. And he's saying here, Biden, Biden of Joe Biden, inbred and deliverance banjos, visits Pennsylvania to talk about bridges and infrastructure the day before. Now, in the Amish classroom, the first through sixth graders are all going to cry, well, that's an obvious setup. That's an obvious setup. Okay, I hear you. In that case, it might be. But I don't want to, I'd rather evolve this conversation for this email into we live in some sort of fractal reality that has to deliver basically the same scripts over and over and over again. It works through people, it works through its minions, and the themes repeat. The themes are a little bit different. So fine. Oh, it's. I mean, maybe that is what happened to the bridge, but that's just to think it's that over and over again is first through sixth grade Amish classroom truthing. Then that implies that some dark ops went out and blew it up, and then Biden had just been in there talking about bridges. Okay, maybe that is what happened, but that's rarely the way it works. Reality flows out. It flows through people. It flows on people on its frequency and its minions. Look at the other example. Did they get together with the movie studio 30 years ago with Dustin Hoffman and Outbreak, knowing 30 years later, in the middle of this thing, they were going to have a truck turnover with monkeys, and that was just planned out there? No, we live in a gigantic script. And I was listening to Ben at Vat City talk about free will and how all of us constantly want to flow through the script, and how he will do everything he can during the day to make a different choice or do something different. And I'm trying to incorporate that. I really am. Even when I this pack of eggs, what is it, 18 eggs, the big one, I take them out in the same way every time. I cook 6 at a time. I took them out at random just because I'm making a commitment to do things differently and break the reality script that influences all of us. This one's from Justin. I don't know how the reality pulls this shit off. In the past week alone, during major college sporting events, there's been an upsetting play at exactly 3 minutes and the 33-second mark, 3:33. The first was Duke and Miami ACC basketball, then again tonight during Georgia, Alabama. I don't know how the reality pulls this stuff off time after time. Has it always been like this? The most fascinating part of this is, has it always been like this? That's what we need to do a whole video on. We know what he's saying in the top part is accurate. We've seen this over and over and over again. Which means what's so amazing about coming to that realization is then it can't all be planned. by the creeps and manipulated. And in the past, every time we saw the 33 in a license plate, oh, that was put there by dark ops. We always had that between the bookends explanation. Now we know it doesn't work that way. It might work that way from time to time, or Biden's bridge might be that, but it's usually not that. You have to think bigger. Just go back to the most incredible example of all time. What was it? The Raptors, the Toronto Raptors basketball playoffs against the Philadelphia 76ers. 4 or 5 years ago, Game 7, shot goes up. I covered it in the video. I'll be brief just to fill in anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about. Last second shot goes up, Game 7. It bounces 4 times on the rim before going in. Underneath the basket is every set of gematria in a jersey you could possibly imagine. The 9 was pushing against the 11. There was a 33 or two 33s. There was a 23, 2 divided by 3, 666. The gematria of the people pushing and shoving under the basket was off the charts from the numbers that we notice, and there's no basketball that's ever bounced 4 times on a rim and then gone in to win a game. Probably in the history of basketball. You had all those things coming together. MIT could design a robot for 20 years that couldn't make a shot so perfectly to bounce 4 times on the rim. Just that one example, let me just finish my thought. That one example convinced me that there is something, reality flows through these people, these minions, or these NPCs, or whatever you think they are. And many times it flows through us, and we sometimes are carrying out its script. That's why we have to jump off that train. But it flows out through these people. There's no way that could ever be coordinated. And then we have thousands of these examples. So over time, the first through sixth grade truther always has the explanation of people planning and plotting. And as time goes on, you see that it's very little of that, and it's more reality flowing through those that are most tuned to its frequency. One other basketball example, maybe 12 to 15 years ago, I'm not sure, the Tracy McGrady impossible comeback, the Houston Rockets against the Spurs. Tracy McGrady scores 13 points in 33 seconds. 33 seconds of the game. There's timeouts and it took more time in watching, but 33 game seconds, 13 points, ended up for the game with 33 points. And the shots were impossible. He made 4 3-pointers that, you'd put the chances of him making each at 1 in 10, and he was fouled on one, made his foul shot, so that's how you get to 13. He made a 4-point play. It was just one impossible feat after another. And then the numbers match up. And, how this happens, who knows? But it is not a coincidence any longer. Absolutely not. It would flow. Reality channels. Maybe I have to go back and watch the scene in Soul about In the Zone. There's that whole thing where they're in the netherworld and little 22's noticing she's messing with players and artists in the zone. There's something related to that as well. And the last part, the most important part to consider, the most fascinating part, has it always been this way? Well, unless during the 2001 7/11 Space Odyssey event, unless that shifted us into an entirely new dark reality, which is possible. I'm not going to take that off the table. I'm not going to put all my chips there, but unless it shifted us into some dark netherworld, a reality, or stalled century. Who knows? That is possible. But we'll just keep it. We'll keep the conspiracy to a minimum, like we already haven't exceeded our conspiracy threshold if anybody stumbles upon this from Skokie. I would say, personally, it's always been like this, but it hasn't been noticeable in the past. Whatever's happening to reality in the last 20 years, whether they, quote, they are causing it, or CERN is causing it, or whatever it may be, at the end of the age, as everything's being squeezed, everything is more pronounced. Everything is on steroids. Everything is like to the exponent degree higher. So it's more noticeable to us. It can't be subtle anymore. If a politician is just a ridiculous buffoon, you get a Nancy Pelosi. In the past, There's politicians like Tip O'Neill that were kind of buffoonish, but they kind of fit in. It was more subtle. Everything was more subtle in the past. And it's that maybe it's the yin and yang causing it. Again, if they're trying to take bites that are too big, which they are, and they're breaking the rules, and maybe it's not just they causing it. I'm not just going, Matt, you're going back to Men in Black between your bookends. I'm just in this example, and that's part of it. But if they're taking, in this one example, there might be many different causes. If they're taking bigger bites than they should, then the back end or back, the yin and yang, the back end's going to be more pronounced as well. And it's not just, again, what the creeps are doing. All of reality is, I don't know, time is going faster. Everything is on steroids. Everything is to the 10th power, where in the past, everything kind of blended in. So I think in the past, if you looked more closely and you spent more time and patience on it, I think the gematria would show up in some of these events, or the governing dynamics of reality would expose itself in some coincidences or synchronicities or incredible sporting events like the Immaculate Reception, things like that, if you broke it down. But the whole presentation of reality in the past was more believable. It was more presentable. It was more professional. So now if something, it's a last second shot, then not only is it stranger, the circumstances are stranger, but then the gematria is more in your face. So I don't know what's causing that. But my point is, it's always been here. It's just now everything, if somebody was fat in the past and they couldn't get the 42 pants to buckle, now it's my 600-pound life. Everything is enhanced. It's just the way reality's gone, whether the creeps caused it or not. This picture is from Jeff. Thanks, Jeff. If anybody's driving, just listening, I'll talk you through it. You don't need to see it. A couple people are probably getting their feathers all ruffled. A couple people in their Scarface jacuzzi tubs rising up with their cigar, and Michelle Pfeiffer bitching at them from behind, ready to throw their rubber ducky at me, that this is some sort of one-eye symbolism. No, this is his cousin's picture. He had sent me another as well of his cousin standing in front of the WTC. He just asked me to block the face. So get back into the tub. It's fine. It's not one-eye symbolism. I just blocked the face. Now, what is amazing about this, Jeff proposed this as, what causes this? And again, if you're driving, I'll describe what you're seeing. Is this a retrocausality? How does this happen? So Jeff's cousin is, I don't know if it potentially could be the observation deck from the Empire State Building. It's about the same distance and height and perspective. And there's a grid or a fence keeping people from throwing themselves over the side. But the fence forms pyramids, and it forms rectangles. And right when two of the bars cross over, it's going exactly into the point of WTC number 2, the quote, impact point, quote, of WTC 2. The X is right over, well, the X, you could say, basically, is X marks the spot on the WTC, is small in the distance. But if you really want to break down exactly where the X is crossing, it looks like the exact spot for the South Tower where that quote happened. And it's also at the top of, if you want to remove, say you don't want to see it as an X, you could see it at the very top of the pyramid, the way this fence forms a pyramid. And guys, if this is all we had, of course, people people that went back and got all over me. Well, not too many people. There were some comments about the Tom Petty took it in the arm, and he walked by the spire of the Chrysler Building, which is like a needle, and he was hunched over and it went right by his arm. People are like, Matt, that's a stretch. Come on, you conspiracy. But like this picture, if it's all we had, right, it's a stretch. But we now have over 1,000 of these things. And how many? And that's just what I've seen. So how many thousands more exist? And it's not if somebody's saying, Matt, so many people went up to New York and took so many pictures. Of course, eventually you're going to have these sorts of circumstances and synchronicity and coincidence. I agree. But this is happening over and over with our group. Just how did Jeff happen to come across this picture? Did he go to his cousin and say, I need to see every single picture you've ever taken in your life, and then I want to find one that has some sort of conspiracy synchronicity and send it to Matt? I doubt that's what happened. It comes up, this stuff shows itself unnaturally, disproportionate to the amount it should show up. It shows it up 10 to 100 times more often. So how does this happen? I don't know, but it does fuel the argument for retrocausality. Whether this, I believe in retrocausality, whether this was or not, but if you believe in retrocausality and apply it, I don't apply it to too many things because it is way out there. But someone would say, when this picture was taken per the retrocausality of the big event in 2001, there was no X going through the WTC. That just it didn't exist if you saw this picture in 1995 or 1998. It exists now, and people that believe that would say thousands or tens of thousands or millions of things potentially reset or jumped just a little bit because of the big event. And the idea, if you're unfamiliar with retrocausality, would be because it's pretty obvious that consciousness, the generative aspect of consciousness creates reality. Whether you're a fan of the double slit experiment or not, it doesn't matter. It's the opposite of the Big Bang, which is ridiculous. Something blowed up, and then life and consciousness came from that. No, it's just, what's the first Kabbalion principle? All is mind or consciousness, all is mental consciousness, mentalism. Of course, consciousness came first. That's why these creeps are in the positions they are, because they know how to influence the generator beings. And the generator beings aren't even aware of how consciousness affects reality. So many people, the idea behind the retrocausalities for the 7/11/2001 Space Odyssey event is so many people were focusing on it. So many generative beings, real spirits, were focusing on it that it literally reset reality itself, not just for the future, but rippled back through time as well. We'll talk about that some other time. It's a fascinating subject. This next one's from Chris. I'm not going to read all of it. And guys, for those that haven't seen the movie, Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio, I won't spend too much time here for those because probably more than half of you maybe have not seen it. But in just 1 minute on what it is, and I didn't even realize this at first. Chris is basically saying here, Don't Look Up. It's, I think, a Netflix movie, and it's the first hour's pretty good. I mean, it's not terrible. Don't Look Up is specifically meant to be a condemnation of those who don't take climate change seriously. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, they discover there's an asteroid or a comet that's coming to destroy the Earth. Like, we haven't seen that theme a million times. They can't get anybody interested, or they can't get anybody to take it seriously, even when they get a visit to Meryl Streep's White House. She's terrible as the president. You know, she's laughing, and nobody takes it seriously. It's very similar in a way to Idiocracy. And when you watch this movie, you don't think climate change. You just don't. But here he's saying how, and we're basically want to take it to this point in the email, is how they're eventually most likely going to link it as an allegory to climate change. See, in the movie Don't Look Up, there was a comet coming that was going to destroy the Earth. Nobody cared. Everybody laughed. Nobody took it seriously, even the president. And then they'll link it then to everybody's ignoring climate change. But what's most fascinating here is the part in the middle here. Let's say, after seeing a normie friend of mine discuss how it was a beautiful movie that metaphorically represents how half the country doesn't want to do anything to help save the world from the impending climate disaster. So a friend, see, there's no possible way, when I was going back and forth with Chris here, that the normie's going to pick that up. That, oh, wait a second, this movie's not about a comet at all. It's making a metaphor or an allegorical representation of how everybody's ignoring climate change. Nobody's going to do that. Unless, I don't watch the news and I don't read the Atlantic magazine, but the only way his normie friend could make this association is if they've already started to link it. to see how they didn't take that comment seriously. Well, we're doing the same thing now with climate change, and I didn't realize they would start to link it. Because what do I, again, I don't read Time, I don't read Newsweek, I don't read Time. I'm out of touch in that regard. But they've obviously already started to link it, and when it gets its awards or it gets its Oscar or whatever a Netflix movie would get, they'll talk about. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, but what they're kind of sneakily trying to do there. The movie, what's it called with Dennis Quaid, The Day After Tomorrow? That wasn't subtle at all. It put 3 hurricanes down onto the earth that were 100 times larger than any than any hurricane there's ever been, 3 at the same time, and linked all of it to climate change and desalinization of the water. And what we thought in the initial lecture, he's like, we might have 100 years, we might have 1,000 years, but at some point our grandparents are going to have to pay. Not our grandparents, our grandchildren are going to have to pay for this. He gets a call the next day saying it's starting to happen. So that movie was a little less subtle. Thanks, Chris. This came from Mache, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's from standard.co.uk about mindful nihilism. I didn't realize there was a bunch of subsections of atheism. I guess this is one of them, but we'll see. Mindful nihilism is all about seeing yourself as an insignificant cog in the universe's big picture, and it could be the key to a more content 2022. By Rosie Fritz Maurice? What? Did you ever lie awake at night agonizing about being utterly forgotten once you've shuffled off this mortal coil? No, Rosie, in this community, we don't do that. Our torture is this mortal coil. It's just the opposite for us, but let me just continue reading. Do you even matter? Do you feel so pressured to leave behind some semblance of a legacy that it's making you miserable? Ever feel like your burning ambition is physically draining or making you ill? No. These were all questions plaguing Melbourne. A Melbourne-based Wendy Seafried. Anybody Melbourne-based the last 2 years is going to have a lot of things plaguing them, who had worked in media and couldn't stop obsessing over what her life meant. Then she had an anxiety attack and decided to change the way she approached things. Oh, well, that's good. Let's see what her approach is here. Maybe we can incorporate some of it. Nihilism, the belief that life is meaningless, is not something we typically associate with millennials, is not something we typically associate with millennials who have grown up in the age of the side hustle, be the change you want to see, and sometimes another hashtag girl boss. What? No, it is something we would expect from millennials. What are you talking about? But for Wendy Seifert, the idea that life could have no point gave her the perspective she needed to become happy. What? As we make our way wearily and warily into 2022, it could help you too, it says at the end. You've got to be kidding me. No, I know the world is backwards. I mean, who you talking to here? But I didn't think this form of self-help existed quite yet. I figured there's still like Tony Robbins types that'll steal your money, $400 to go into the seminar. They'll pump you up and tell you all these things about yourself, and you're going to be successful, and here's what you need to do, and you'll walk out of the seminar feeling all happy for about 5.5 minutes until you realize you just got $400 stolen out of your pocket. At least that's what I thought self-help was. This is it's like the Tony Robbins Bizarro world. Superman had his counterpart, Bizarro Superman. It's the opposite. A Tony Robbins figure comes forth and says, I'm going to make you feel better. You're nothing. You're completely nothing, you out in the audience. And your life's meaningless, completely meaningless. And by the end of my seminar, you're going to use this audience to feel better about yourself. You're going to love it. I thought I was here for help. No, you're meaningless. Let's start with a 10-minute video from Neil of the Grass-Fed Neil deGrasse Bison, who's going to tell you how you're just an insignificant little speck in the middle of this Carl Sagan's billions and billions. See, it's all like they've been working towards this a long time. Mostly through the scientists and Carl Sagan. You're just a speck of nothingness, and then that transforms into 2022 with articles directly telling you you're nothing and that you're going to use that to actually feel good. I don't get it. We don't have that problem here. We don't. Well, you truth people, you're just self-delusional. You're nihilists too. No, we're not. We're not. We're understanding who we really are, or we have already understood, many of us, in the scheme of things, and it's the opposite. It's the opposite of this. The nihilistic, meaningless part is the opposite. It's this life, not meaningless, but in the scheme of things. Oh, we're here to learn. We're here to dump our baggage. We're here to throw our banana peels out the window and do what we need to do, but this is the part that's insignificant. These people we need to enjoy life as much as possible by seeing that they have no spiritual nature whatsoever and that this is all there is. It's just another hybrid of atheism. Is anybody surprised? Not really. Which kind of brings us back to this. If you're driving, you've seen it. We've all seen it. The smiling, shiny, happy person. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. But this is another reality gives itself away series topic because it can never stop. It's never satisfied. See, in the past 50 years, it's about equating one's life to material possessions, social standings, likes, thumbs up, social credit score, how many homes or cars they have, or just things that are meaningless in the scheme of the spiritual evolution of an immortal spirit, something that's always has been, always will be, that just sees this as a train stop. They said, well, it's about attaching to the things that this world can do for you and give you in material possessions. And you'd think that was like good enough for them if they get billions of people to attach to that and cut off their own spiritual ties. But see, that's not even good enough. The reality gives itself away because it can't stop. It always has to keep pushing. It can never, ever stop. It is never satisfied. Now that you can't even find, according to it, you can't even find happiness in your material possessions and your social standing, or the things that are meaningless to us that it told people for 40 years were meaningful. That's no longer even good enough. Now you'll own nothing and be happy. It's kind of like there's some kind of rules here to this game, guys, that like the creeps can keep in their role or keep playing their role and keep their position as long as they have to keep pushing. And that's why, maybe to answer my question from 20 minutes ago, maybe that's why everything is getting so exponentially absurd or exponentially idiocracy, because per the rules of this game, the creeps can't stop pushing. What's next? You'll wish to be a frog in a pond and you'll be happy? Where will they stop? Derek's email is 3 different screenshots. Thanks, Derek. I'll read most of it before talking about it. Enjoyed the message today. The system, I prefer to call it the machine, like Pink Floyd. Very good song too. Pink Floyd, Welcome to the Machine. The system knows exactly how to absorb our energy and redirect it towards its own ends. No doubt about it. All revolution is not only tolerated, it's encouraged. Quick little expose for you. It works like a vaccine. Any countercultural ideas are dangerous to the machine. So if the machine is able to introduce these ideas, its position is more stable than if they were outright covered up or leaked out. Say, I'm just saying, Matt talking now, leaked out without the machine being aware. This is a revelation of the method he's talking about. Because if they were covered up, and were leaked out or given to the populace by the machine itself, when people discovered them, there would be an inflammatory response. And this is Matt saying people would take more interest in it if it didn't come through the machine. But if the ideas are out there everywhere, if there's a Netflix documentary about conspiracies, for example, then the people are inoculated against the inflammatory response. Matt would say they become habituated to it through revelation of the method. Yeah, I already heard about that on Netflix last week. Whatever, man. Truly bizarre, 5D chess kind of thing. This is exactly, Matt talking again, this is exactly what they did with the Snowden, quote, Snowden, I'm snowed in now, Snowden revelations. Yeah, sure, all a script, all a complete setup where, the way Alex Jones talked about this was accurate. It's a ton of truth that has come out of there over the years. A ton of truth comes out of a lot of animal farms. Even creeps like Russell Brand. If I finally look into what his act is someday, I'll look into that. But yeah, they when we told my aunt that the smart devices are listening, they thought we were crazy. And then through the Snowden revelations and the movie Snowden and the WikiLeaks, and then my aunt over 5 years morphed, as the whole society morphed, into, well, it's okay if it stops T-ism events, and I have nothing to hide. They molded my aunt into exactly what they want the populace to say, and she just parroted it back. Squawk, squawk, parroted it back. It's incredible. I was going to give them props. Like, it's incredible how they work, but they're probably like, we've tuned these mofos to a certain frequency. It's easy to get them to parrot back whatever we want. Okay, guys, back to this. I keep wondering, what is the machine? No doubt there are higher people and probably non-human entities that know how to program the machine for their own selfish ends, what Matt calls the minions. But as the paranoia began to recede, I again, like you, began to see that there is more to it than that. For lack of a better term, the machine is the ego. We all have individual ego. The machine is the collective ego. When we act from a place of ego, self-centeredness, we feed the machine. When I think, quote, this world is so messed up, but I know how to fix it myself, everybody should listen to me because I know how to fix it, then we are feeding the machine. So interestingly, we have a long history of revolutions that just turned into the same thing that they were rebelling against. Why? Because they were more interested in, quote, being revolutionaries than actually changing and working on themselves. Very well said. It says this world is so messed up, I know how to fix it. Then it just morphs back and becomes the same thing over again. That's why I went 2 years ago to Woy, W-O-Y, Woy about yourself. Woy about yourself. You're here for yourself. You're here to learn your lessons. If you think you can change the world out there through protest or whatever, that is one of the main playbook games that this reality plays, dangling that carrot that we just get enough people in the right minds together. We're not here. Real spirits are not here to change the world. The world is here to change real spirits. So the real revolution now seems to me to be something like this. You can do what you think is right, even if I know that you're wrong. He's saying don't judge others. You can do what you think is right. Go ahead. But even if I know what you're doing is wrong, I'm not going to get involved, he's saying, I think. I must allow you to do it without feeling any bitterness about the situation. The situation here is perfect, even if it appears to be horrific. And then a funny thing happens. I tell you, suddenly when the machine turns off in you, even for a minute, the machine outside of you can no longer bother you. This is basically saying, no, I'm going to just let people do their own thing. It's very similar to worry about yourself. The machine outside of you can no longer bother you when the machine in you turns off. You feel unstuck. It's funny because I know that so many spiritual teachers throughout time have been trying to show us this. Jesus said to forgive, Buddha said to let go of ego, etc., etc. But even their messages can be taken over by egos wanting to appear enlightened. Very interesting. Very interesting. Tell me there's not an arrogance in people that appear enlightened or appear to know things that others don't. And I catch these tendencies in myself, and we all have to be wary and guard against them. Ending the reading now, just want to add a few things before moving on, but this was very interesting. First thing I think of reading this is Lego my ego. The retrocausality language coming through a waffle box. Let go of my ego. Now, is that a stretch? Sure. Am I 100% sure that Lego my ego waffles means let go of your ego and is a larger innuendo to this machine email? No, I'm not going to push my chips there. But is the reality capable of sending that message, like some retrocausality through a waffle box? Is it capable of it? Absolutely, it's capable of it. And if anybody's dismissing it, you're a first grade truther. Be lucky you're in the Amish classroom with the Jedis here. You can't dismiss that. That is absolutely the way this weird place works. The other thing I was thinking about as I was reading that is when he was talking about fighting it. And fighting it, I've said it many times in the past. It's exactly what it wants. It wants you to fight it. The more aggressive or violent your protest, the more it wants that. The more it feeds off the energy. And it's not just about loosh. It's about playing pawns into doing exactly what it wants. So I was thinking, in the truth community, there's always this segment here that we're going to march the Hillary Clintons off to jail. And and then it relates kind of ... to the Trump Q and all that nonsense, the sealed indictments. I'm still waiting for the sealed indictments. When are people going to go to jail? When? Nobody with us? Nobody went to jail yet? No. The sealed indictments are all this stuff. March the Hillary Clintons off to jail. It relates back to the BitChute videos will come and the Odyssey videos and the Brighteon videos about arrests because of this thing going on now. It's the same script. Now, I know, just take the Bolshevik Revolution. I ain't no expert at the Bolshevik Revolution. Anybody's rising up out of their Scarface jacuzzi tub. I know they play both sides. This is not my first rodeo here. I know almost every war, major conflict like that is cooked up. Mao didn't do his thing on his own. All part of the weird group that's been around since Babylon. I ain't no expert at it. I never been in no back rooms. I only observe. Okay, let's just put it that way. So let's just take the Bolshevik Revolution. Even though it's orchestrated, but the people at the lower and middle levels believe in it. They totally believe in it. Watch Dr. Zhivago again. Those middle level communist thugs. I mean, they believed in it. This is not your house anymore. This is the party's house, and it's going to have 27,000 families living on top of each other in your house. Dr. Zhivago. They get the people to believe in it. So, and just like he says here, every revolution, what did it do? At the other side, it just spit out the whole lousy reality in society. It just got worse. Big Brother got bigger. Nothing ever changed. So you've cooked up the reality itself using its minions and its propagandists, cooked up thousands of these types of revolutions, and not one time has anything great or grand come out the other side. And I got you rising up. Matt, did you ever hear of something called 1776? Well, yeah, it's not my first rodeo. But that is, if you think that is just wonderful, altruistic people that were fighting for you, that just for just a short period we had true freedom. If you see it that way and you don't see it as part of a very long-term script, then again, be fortunate we're in the Amish classroom and listen when we give the Jedi discussions and the PhD discussions. It's not as simple as just wonderful people that's decided for the first time in history to push back on King George. No, it's not that simple, but that's not the purpose here. And boy, can I even say that anymore? Doesn't the Constitution protect me the Constitution of the United States protects my ability to say things like that, but then when I say things like that, I can't post for 7 days. That makes a lot of sense. So, but what I did when the 7-day whatever happened, that was a little worse than what I just said. So, guys, it's all very interesting. And the people that engage in these revolutions all believe in it. So the point is, if there is one now and every pharma executive goes to jail and all the cover-ups and because of what's happening now, why would we think this revolution, based on fighting back or pushing back on the CV infrastructure, why would we think this would be any different? I would think history holds, and if it does work us up into a revolution based on what's going on now, I would think it's the same script as what's played out over the last 2,000 years. But somebody listening to this can think, no, this one's different. Yeah, sure it is. This is from Jared. Thanks, Jared. It says, hope you and the cats are doing well. Watching your latest video. with the A to B graphic made me think of something. Guys, let me just, for those that don't remember the presentation, highly sophisticated graphic. I just drew a line on a piece of paper, point A and point B. And point A, if I even remember myself correctly, point A is kind of like a genuine human being that has an understanding of its spiritual self and the big scheme of things that's going on here with life on earth being a train stop, and the entire reality working through every system and every minion. It tries to devolve a human being down the line into what it wants, into B. There's a million different ways it tries to get somebody from A to B. And you know what person B is? Remember that we just talked about nihilism and things like that? And that's kind of person B, but there's a lot of different forms of person B. Person B can be my father, who just says, I guess I don't really think there's anything after this. And it's not just about atheism and what you believe in after death. Person B attaches to the wrong things and believes the awards that the Matrix gives are important, like accreditation on a resume or a Nobel Prize. I mean, it just, all it does, the entire reality is try to push people down the line. So that's just a little recap if you forget that one. I hope I kind of forgot. I hope I'm remembering it correctly. Wouldn't that be embarrassing? But I think that's what it was. Jared says, in order to push a person down the dial from real boy to wooden doll, it's a reverse Pinocchio system. The system gradually tries to manipulate a person to keep making compromises with it. Exactly. Like you were talking about with microchipping, when something gets soft introduced by means of something seemingly harmless as chipping pets, it then makes it easier for the system to get people to take more significant actions in that direction in the future. The way I see the graph is that each hash mark from A to B could be a potential compromise a real spirited being could make with the screen. As for what those compromises are, one's inner tuning fork will undoubtedly let them know if what they're doing puts them closer to the screen or closer to spirit. Now he put it much better than I did. When I put those slashes along the line, I was saying like these are potential wins in its 2,000-year strategy, or its 200-year strategy, or 20,000-year strategy, whatever you believe it to be. I put these slashes. These are big wins. Like 2001, A 7/11 Space Odyssey, it got 5 billion people to believe, or more, to believe that the dude in the cave did it, and that means 20 years we got to go do this and fight that. That's a huge win. But I like the way he's putting it better here. It's more of somebody compromising themselves. And here he's expanding it. It's not just about being fooled to line up with the official narrative. It's even, if I could speak for him, it's something even as small as at the end of a website saying, I'm not a robot, or I agree to these terms. And I think these are all little micro compromises it tries to do to people all day long. Now, I made an affirmation years ago. I said, I'm not doing it anymore case by case. If I switch my cable TV from Verizon to Comcast, I have to click, I agree to all the terms. I click, I'm not a robot, which by clicking I'm not a robot implies you may be a robot someday. That's how the word magic and all this crazy stuff works. But I made an affirmation. I believe we're all powerful enough to do this. This seems to me how reality works. I said, in the future, I'm going to click these agree buttons. I'm not going to read the fine print, but I make the affirmation that if there's anything in there that compromises me spiritually, whether it be through word games or word magic, it doesn't apply to me. I'm not affected by it. I see through the trick. I need to get my cable switched, or I need to renew my driver's license. So I don't have to keep doing this. I think once you make one affirmation saying, I see the magic trick. It's a magician. I might go back and watch the magic show comes every day at 1 o'clock. It keeps coming. I'm going to have to keep sitting through it if I want to get to the buffet. But I don't have to keep saying every time I see the magic show, I make the affirmation that guy's not really pulling a rabbit out of the hat. Make it once. And then I made the same affirmation. All these movies, I'll continue reading in just a moment. All these movies that have this creepy spell, whatever, the creepy Latin spell casting in Ready Player One, and the parcel talk or the snake tongue in Harry Potter. And years ago, I said this in some ways meant to affect the viewer or the person watching the movie at home. And I made the affirmation, I'm not going to keep saying this. Whatever's being said here does not influence me, does not work on me. And I believe I know we have the power to do that. For this next one, because of some things that are mentioned, I'm not even going to say the first name of who sent this. He can email me if he wants. I recall an interview made online several years ago by an ex-FBI senior agent who had run several investigations into conspiracies and high-level political/media type corruption in the U.S. and worldwide. His view was the same as mine, that there was something coordinated going on, something at the heart of these conspiracies, something coordinated, something with an overriding unconscious agenda, irrational motives, and illogical objectives. However, it was not coming directly from or by any sort of, quote, elite individuals or coordinated groups of people. However, the agent said that when his investigation teams got to the top of everything and were able to get full disclosure at every level, the coordination didn't make any sense. It was as if something, quote, demonic was going on, something transhuman influencing things like some sort of virtual hypnotic, quote, mind-hacking conspiracy. But he didn't know by what or how. It was as if the people involved and their personalities seemed to have an abstracted distance, unconcerned, as if in a dream. Yet to them, they were behaving seemingly logically and rationally, behaving as programmed puppets with something, quote, invisible pulling the strings and some hidden yet illogical agenda. Now, guys, this email goes on to 2 more slides, but let's just address this. This screams to me the frequency. It screams to me the frequency. People, when it gets people tuned to its frequency, it's no different than the download. People will act out, and they think they're doing it as their own conscious free will and free choice. They'll act out what the screen wants or what the darker part of reality wants. I don't know what to call it, as I've said a million times. I just call it the screen, the not milk reality, whatever stands behind the actions of George Soros. The same thing over and over again. But guys, as the months go on, I see clearly that these people, even at that level, the George Soros level, whatever, they're not in on as much as you would think. Now, many of you are getting tired of me saying that, but it's worth repeating. It's a fundamental understanding of how reality works. They believe they're doing certain things for certain reasons, and they're not even aware of whatever is pulling the strings on them. Now, it stands in the shadows. It's something that can never be pointed at in a police lineup. A Christian would say Satan. I call it the screen, not milk. But this is confirming just another confirmation to what I've been talking about. Saying, it says, I recall an interview with an ex-FBI senior agent, looks at these conspiracies, and he's like, well, people are being directed and influenced, and like, somebody like an FBI agent that's just going to look between the reality bookends as to what makes sense inside known reality. It's just like, well, it didn't make sense. Like, why are these people? Who's coordinating this? We could never find the ultimate bad guy. Exactly. Been saying this for years. Next segment of the email. Next slide. From my experience working at the highest levels in government and defense organizations, I can also attest to similar examples from 20 years ago, long before having the extreme experiences shared in my other books. At that time, it was also obvious to me that the people involved had no idea they were being driven by something, and that they had no concept of what they were doing or why, and their personalities seemed different than the expected normal. They blindly followed some hypnotic yet seemingly logical to them transhuman concept in a brainwashed, coordinated manner among groups, carrying out actions and following behaviors that were absurd, blind, uncaring, as if they were asleep to what they're doing and the consequences, and way beyond corporate-type herd-like impetus, combined with fear of losing their jobs for speaking out. Last slide. It is the source, or IT is the source of most of the conspiracies at work within society, when there is nobody at the top, no real, quote, them, or, quote, hidden elite, or, quote, ancient aliens. That's it. Ultimately, there is no coordination by individual humans or groups, but there is something in control, something, quote, at the top, something, not someone or some group, pulling the strings and giving it energy and drive, yet with no logical direction. To me, the dark here is a logical direction, but okay, let's continue. It is something with very limited awareness or management capability. There is no cohesive strategy, no logical plan, and it operates in blind ignorance of its own situation, habits, and environment. And consequently, and fairly obviously, IT is stubbornly heading for disaster. Well, this last part, that it's just, how do you know? How do we know it's something with limited awareness or management capability? There is no cohesive strategy. I would say just the opposite. To be able to do all it's done, pull off all that it's pulled off, it's us that probably are fish in the fish tank, thinking, oh, what is that giant hand that comes and puts the flakes in? And what is this thing, this sun we call a heater? And we have the limited cognitive abilities here to understand the whole. We have the limited senses. I mean, to us, but you can't apply that to whatever the screen is. You can only notice what the screen tries to do to real human beings. It tries to reverse Pinocchio everybody to cutting its spiritual ties. We can only see its actions and try to protect ourselves, put on our own armor. Woi about yourself. That's what we can do in terms of why it wants to drive everybody down into the zeros and ones and transhumanism and the Netflix series Upload, which is only worth watching. It's worth watching the first episode. It is a scary proposition. Then it goes nowhere. But watch the first episode of Upload. You put your consciousness with a little bit of soul or whatever into a computer program. The young guy agrees to do it, and about 5 days later, his girlfriend's bored with it, and she doesn't even want to talk to him anymore through his screen. So, I mean, we and I'm sorry if whoever, I know the name of whoever put this together, and I if I'm not interpreting correctly, then I'm not interpreting correctly. But we don't have to know ultimately what that thing that can't be pointed at is up to. All we have to see is what it wants to do to us and the tricks that it employs, and protect ourselves. That's what and then once we do that, and don't, per emails back, don't feed the machine, then there's a lot of tools and things we can do with this reality to benefit ourselves. And just to have a little bit of fun in this last section, again, the dark reality here, the part that tries to hide a human being from itself, I think it's pretty organized. I think it knows exactly what it's doing. We don't have to know what its ultimate plan is. It may be beyond our perception. It might be outside of the third dimension. We just need to protect ourselves. So what would its resume look like? It has kind of an impressive resume. So the best way to talk about resumes, of course, is to go back to the scene in Soul Plane where Snoop Dogg presents he's about to fly the 747 Soul Plane, fly Tom Arnold across country, and this is his resume. Right before he's presenting a resume, right before he gets in the cockpit. Snoop Dogg is Antoine Mack from Cerritos, California. If you want to see his website, it's flyingpimp.net. Objective, fly big-ass planes all over the world and meet fun and interesting people, get girls and shit. Qualifications, 3 years, Air Force, flew in Desert Storm. Not exactly. 2 years, bus driver, 6 months, shoe place. He hands a resume to, what's the little comedian's name? I forget who owns the Soul Plane. He's like, you flew in Desert Storm? Well, not exactly. I drew on bombs. It says here you flew. Well, I drew on bombs in Desert. You drew on bombs? Yeah, I'm the one that wrote on the side of the bomb, Saddam, eat a dick, whatever. That was me. It says you flew here, whatever. Education, 3 years Pelican Bay School of Aeronautics. That with honors. That's a prison with honors. I didn't think Pelican Bay had a School of Aeronautics. Maybe they do. A GED with honors and Citizen of the Week in 5th grade elementary school. Relevant experience. Beat F-15 Flying Eagle on Xbox twice and saw Top Gun 7 times. Other experience. Crew chief, Jimmy's Burger Bar. So what would the resume of this system, how impressive would it be? It wouldn't fit on one page. I mean, that's for sure. It would be mighty impressive. It would say things like objective, to hide a real spiritual being from its true spiritual nature, to get a spiritual being to believe that all it is and all it ever will be is attached to this reality of which I rule. That would be the objective. Qualifications, been doing this and been performing the reverse Pinocchio on real spiritual beings for thousands of years. Oh, he's qualified. This reality is qualified. Education, well, who knows? Who knows what's behind the relevant experience? Well, here we go. Relevant experience. Put billions of people to sleep so they can't and don't recognize their true nature. Put forth thousands of multi-leveled conspiracies of which the people end up believing them, don't see through the official narrative, don't believe, can't see what the news presenting is absolute BS, and can't even put common sense equations together that, like inflated tires at the bottom of the WTC, that destroy the official narrative. At the bottom it says in asterisk, and pulled this off tens of thousands of times without ever being caught. That's mighty impressive. That's something to me that knows what it's doing. Thanks for listening, guys.